My phone buzzed while Luna was finally asleep on my chest. 6 months of sleepless nights had taught me to cherish these quiet moments, to barely breathe so I wouldn't wake her. But when I glanced at the screen, everything inside me went cold. The message was from my mother, Victoria. Just 4 words and a photo. "We moved to Valencia. Money's gone. Good luck." The picture showed a sun-drenched terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, all whitewashed walls and bougainvillea, the kind of place that cost more per month than I made in a year. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Luna stirred against me, her tiny fist curling against my collarbone. I opened my banking app with trembling fingers, already knowing what I would find, but praying I was wrong. The joint family account, the one we had all contributed to for emergencies, showed a balance of $0.00. Not almost empty, completely empty. $73,000 gone. Money I had scraped together from overtime shifts and freelance work. Money my grandmother had left me that I had foolishly added to the family fund because my father Richard had convinced me it was the responsible thing to do, the family thing to do. All of it vanished. If you've ever felt the ground disappear beneath your feet, if you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, please hit that like button and subscribe. This is the story of how my family left me with nothing but a 6-month-old baby who wasn't even mine, and how I fought back against people who thought I would just quietly take it. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own survival, because what happened next changed everything. But I need to go back. I need to tell you how I ended up here holding my sister's baby at 3 in the morning while my entire family disappeared to Spain with my life savings. Because this didn't happen overnight. This was the culmination of 29 years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the daughter who solved everyone else's problems while my own dreams gathered dust on a shelf. I grew up in Boston, the oldest of 2 daughters, in what everyone thought was a picture-perfect family. My father, Richard, was a financial consultant with a corner office downtown. My mother, Victoria, taught art history at a private college. We lived in a restored brownstone in Back Bay, had a house on the Cape for summers, attended the right parties, and knew the right people. From the outside, we had everything, but inside those elegant walls, there was a hierarchy and unspoken truth that shaped every interaction. My younger sister Celeste was the golden child, the chosen one, the daughter my parents actually wanted. Celeste was beautiful in that effortless way some people are, with Victoria's green eyes and Richard's sharp cheekbones. She was charming and spontaneous and utterly incapable of thinking about anyone but herself. She dropped out of 3 different colleges each time with a new excuse, a new dream she was chasing. First, it was fashion design, then photography, then she was going to be a yoga instructor who led retreats in Bali. My parents funded every single one of these ventures, writing checks without question, bailing her out when her credit cards maxed out, welcoming her back home whenever her latest plan fell apart. And me, I was the sensible one. I got a full scholarship to Boston University and majored in business because that's what responsible people did. I worked 2 jobs through college, not because I had to, but because I wanted to prove I could take care of myself. After graduation, I got a position at a marketing firm, started saving money, bought a small condo in Somerville that needed work. I spent my weekends renovating it myself, learning from YouTube videos, getting paint in my hair and calluses on my hands. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My parents barely noticed. When I invited them to see the finished kitchen, I had retiled myself. My mother glanced around for 30 seconds before saying it was nice, and then spent the next hour showing me photos of Celeste's latest trip to Thailand. My father asked when I was going to get a real job, something with more prestige, as if my steady income and benefits were somehow less valuable than Celeste's Instagram following. The pattern was set early, and it never changed. When Celeste got a DUI at 23, I was the one who picked her up from the police station at 2 in the morning because our parents were at a gallery opening and couldn't be bothered. She slept in my passenger seat the whole way home, mascara smeared down her face, reeking of vodka and entitlement. When she woke up, she didn't thank me. She asked if I could lend her money for a lawyer. I did. Of course I did. Because that's what family does, right? That's what I had been taught, what had been drilled into me since childhood. Family comes first. Family takes care of each other. except it was always me doing the taking care and them doing the taking. 3 years ago, Celeste convinced my parents to loan her $50,000 to start a boutique clothing line. She had sketches a business plan that someone else had clearly written for her and that megawatt smile that made my father pull out his checkbook. I tried to warn them. I had been working in marketing for 5 years by then, and I knew enough to spot a disaster in the making. Celeste had no experience in fashion, no understanding of supply chains or manufacturing or retail. But when I voiced my concerns at Sunday dinner, my father told me I was being negative. My mother said I was jealous of Celeste's creativity, that I had always been too practical to understand artistic vision. The boutique lasted 8 months. Celeste spent the money on sample inventory that never sold a lease on a storefront in the seaport that was way too expensive, and a launch party that cost $15,000. When it all fell apart, she cried in my parents' living room, and they comforted her, told her it was the economy's fault, the landlord's fault, everyone's fault but hers. They never asked for the money back. They never even mentioned it again. I knew I should have walked away then. But family loyalty is a chain that's hard to break, especially when you've been forged in it your whole life. So I stayed. I showed up for Sunday dinners. I answered my mother's calls. I pretended not to notice that every conversation eventually circled back to Celeste and her latest endeavor, her latest crisis, her latest need for rescue. Then 2 years ago, my parents suggested we open a joint family savings account. It was my father's idea, pitched over Christmas dinner with brandy and good intentions. He said it made sense for us to pool resources for emergencies, for future investments, for taking care of each other as we all got older. My grandmother had just passed away and left me $30,000. I was 37, still single, and that money represented security, a cushion, maybe a down payment on a better place someday. But Richard made it sound so reasonable, so mature. This was what real families did. This was how we could all benefit from shared prosperity. I should have said no. I should have protected what my grandmother had wanted me to have. But I wanted so badly to be part of something, to be included in their inner circle, instead of always on the outside looking in. So I transferred my inheritance into that joint account. Celeste added $5,000 from some modeling gig she did. My parents put in $38,000. Together, we had $73,000 of family safety net. Over the next year, that account became Celeste's personal ATM. She withdrew money for a trip to Bali that was supposed to be a meditation retreat but turned into 3 months of partying. She took out $8,000 for investment in a friend's startup that never materialized. She used the joint credit card, which was linked to the account, to buy designer clothes and expensive dinners. Each time she had an excuse. Each time my parents defended her, and each time I brought it up at Sunday dinner, I was told I was being petty, that I didn't understand how hard Celeste was working on herself, on her healing journey, on finding her purpose. I should have removed my money then, but I kept hoping things would change. I kept thinking that eventually they would see how unfair it was. Eventually they would appreciate that I was the one who never asked for anything, who never caused problems, who showed up and contributed and kept my mouth shut. Then Luna happened. Celeste got pregnant last year. She was 36, chronically unemployed, and the father was some guy she had met at a festival who disappeared the moment he found out. My parents were horrified, not because Celeste was unprepared to be a mother, but because it would be embarrassing to explain to their friends. Victoria actually cried about what people would think. But Celeste, in typical Celeste fashion, decided this baby was exactly what she needed. She was going to be a mother. She was going to document her journey on social media. She was going to write a book about single motherhood and modern feminism. She spent the pregnancy buying $800 strollers and designer onesies, all charged to the joint family account. She had a photographer at the hospital for the birth. She named the baby Luna because it sounded mystical. And then 3 months after Luna was born, Celeste discovered that being a mother was actually hard work. The Instagram photos of her glowing with a sleeping newborn didn't show the sleepless nights, the colic, the screaming, the constant needs of a tiny human who couldn't be impressed by charm or talked out of being hungry. Celeste started showing up at my condo unannounced, Luna in her car seat, asking if I could watch her for a few hours, while Celeste went to a yoga class or met friends for brunch. Those few hours would stretch into 6, 8 sometimes overnight. I didn't mind, not really. Luna was innocent in all of this. She was a beautiful baby with dark hair and gray eyes that would probably turn green like Celeste's. She had this way of looking at me so serious and focused, as if she was trying to figure out if I was trustworthy. And I fell in love with her. I fell in love with this tiny person who needed me, who relaxed in my arms, who eventually started smiling when she saw me. By the time Luna was 5 months old, she was spending more time at my place than with Celeste. My sister would drop her off on Friday afternoon and not pick her up until Monday morning. She never asked if this was okay. She never offered to pay for diapers or formula. She just assumed I would handle it the same way everyone in my family had always assumed I would handle everything. My work started suffering. I was exhausted trying to manage conference calls with a baby strapped to my chest, answering emails at 3 in the morning between feeding sessions. My boss called me into her office 6 weeks before that text message arrived. She was sympathetic but firm. My performance was declining. I had missed 2 major deadlines. I needed to get it together, or I would need to look for a position that was more compatible with my personal situation. I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't explain that I was essentially single-parenting my sister's baby while my sister was off living her best life and my parents pretended not to notice. Who would believe that? Who would understand? So I just nodded and promised to do better. That evening, I called a family meeting. I asked everyone to come to my condo on Sunday. I had practiced what I was going to say. I was going to set boundaries. I was going to tell them that this couldn't continue, that I needed real support. Or Celeste needed to actually be Luna's mother. I was going to stand up for myself. But on Saturday night, Celeste showed up with Luna and 3 suitcases. She was crying something about needing space, needing time to find herself. She said she was going to stay with a friend in New York for a few weeks. She said our parents thought it was a good idea that I was so good with Luna anyway that it would be better for everyone. She left before I could argue, before I could process what was happening. She just handed me Luna and walked away, her heels clicking down the stairs of my building. I called my parents. My father said Celeste was going through a difficult time and needed our support. My mother said I should be grateful to have this bonding time with my niece. When I tried to explain that I had a full-time job, that I couldn't afford full-time childcare, that this wasn't sustainable, Victoria actually laughed. She said, "Eleanor, you've always been so dramatic. It's just a few weeks. Celeste needs this." That was 3 months ago. 3 months of slowly drowning while everyone pretended I was just floating. 3 months of watching my savings dwindle as I paid for everything Luna needed. 3 months of Sunday dinners where my parents asked if Luna was sleeping through the night yet, but never asked if I was okay, if I needed help, if I was hanging on by my fingernails. And then 2 weeks ago, something changed. My parents suddenly stopped responding to my texts. Celeste went completely silent. When I drove to their house in Back Bay, it was dark with mail piling up in the box. Their neighbor said they had gone on vacation somewhere in Europe. Wasn't it wonderful that they could just pick up and go at their age? I felt uneasy, but I pushed it down. They were just taking a trip. They would come back. They would deal with Celeste and Luna. I just had to hold on a little longer. Then tonight happened. That text message. That photo, that casual cruelty disguised as a vacation update. Luna woke up when I gasped, started crying, that sharp newborn cry that cuts right through you. I held her against me, tried to soothe her while my entire world shattered around us. I checked my email, my other accounts. There was nothing, no explanation, no forwarding address, no phone number. I opened my laptop with one hand while Luna nursed desperate for more information. I checked social media. Victoria had posted the Valencia photo an hour ago with the caption, "New chapter, new adventures." Dozens of their friends had commented congratulating them, asking if they were moving permanently. My mother had responded to several, saying they had been planning this for months, that they were so excited for this next phase of life. Months. They had been planning this for months. I went into my bedroom, the one that used to be my office before it became Luna's nursery, and pulled open the drawer of my desk where I kept important papers. That's when I saw the envelope, cream-colored and expensive, sitting on top of everything else. My name was written across it in my mother's elegant handwriting. Inside was a single document. Guardianship papers. Legal custody of Luna granted to me. The signature at the bottom was mine, or at least it looked like mine. The date was from 4 months ago. I had never signed this document. I had never seen it before. But there it was, notarized and official, granting me full legal guardianship of my sister's child. They had forged my signature. They had planned this. They had waited until everything was in place, and then they had abandoned both of us with the efficiency of people who had clearly given this a great deal of thought. I put Luna in her crib and went into the bathroom and threw up. Not from morning sickness or food poisoning, but from the pure shock of understanding exactly how much my family despised me. They didn't just take my money. They didn't just take advantage of my reliability. They actually got rid of me like I was a problem to be solved, a burden to be shed. They had used me up and thrown me away. When I came out of the bathroom, my phone was ringing. Celeste. I answered it without thinking, without preparing myself. "Hey, Eleanor." Her voice was light, cheerful, like we were just two sisters catching up. "I heard Mom and Dad made it to Valencia. Isn't that amazing? They've been wanting to do this forever." "You knew." My voice came out flat dead. "You all knew." "Well, yeah." She laughed, actually laughed. "I mean, we talked about it at Christmas, the Valencia plan. Weren't you listening?" I tried to remember Christmas. We had done it at their house the last normal Sunday dinner before everything accelerated. Celeste had been showing everyone photos on her phone of some trip she wanted to take. My parents had been talking about retirement, about how they wanted to travel more. I had been in the kitchen helping with dishes while Luna slept in her carrier, half listening to the conversation in the other room. "You planned this," I said. "All of you. You planned to leave me with Luna and take all the money." "Oh my God, you're being so dramatic." Her voice sharpened. "You agreed to watch her. You signed the guardianship papers." "I never signed anything, Celeste." "Whatever. Look, you're good with her. You like playing house. And honestly, motherhood just isn't for me right now. I need to focus on myself, on my healing. Mom and Dad need their retirement. Everyone gets what they want. Except me." My hands were shaking again. "I don't get anything. I get a baby that isn't mine and an empty bank account." "Jesus, Eleanor, you always have to make everything about you." She was getting angry now, that petulant tone she got when someone dared to push back against her. "You know what I'm glad we left? You're exhausting. You're always judging everyone, always acting like you're so much better than the rest of us just because you have a boring job and pay your bills on time. You're just mad that we're finally free and you're stuck being responsible." "I'm stuck because you left me here." I was shouting now something I never did. "You all left me with nothing. You have Luna." Her voice turned cold. "And honestly, you should be grateful. At least now you have someone who needs you. God knows you've been desperate for that your whole life." She hung up. Just ended the call, leaving me standing in my small living room, holding a phone that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with Luna in my arms, and I let myself think thoughts I had never allowed before. I thought about how my grandmother had told me right before she died to use that inheritance money for myself to do something that made me happy. I thought about how I had wanted to buy into a pottery business, how I had this dream of running a small studio where I could work with my hands and create beautiful things. I thought about how quickly I had put that dream away when my father talked about family responsibility. I thought about every time Celeste had needed me and I had shown up. Every time my parents had dismissed my feelings and I had swallowed my hurt. Every Sunday dinner where I had sat quietly while they talked about Celeste's latest adventure, her latest need, her latest drama. 37 years of being invisible unless someone needed something from me. And I thought about Luna, this tiny person who had done nothing wrong, who deserved better than being everyone's inconvenience. She deserved a family that wanted her. She deserved someone who would fight for her. By the time the sun came up on Monday morning, I had made a decision. I was done being the good daughter, the reliable sister, the person everyone could use and discard. I was going to fight back, not just for me, but for Luna. Because if I didn't stand up now, if I let them get away with this, then I was teaching her that it was okay to be treated this way. And I couldn't do that. The first thing I did was call my boss and tell her I needed personal time. I explained as briefly as possible that I was dealing with a family emergency involving custody of my infant niece. She was more understanding than I expected, told me to take a week, and we would figure out a longer-term solution when I came back. The second thing I did was go to my bank. I sat down with the manager and explained the situation with the joint account. She was sympathetic but firm. Because all account holders had equal access, what my parents had done was technically legal even if it was morally bankrupt. She suggested I file a police report if I believed fraud had occurred. So I went to the police station. The officer who took my report was kind but not particularly hopeful. Family financial disputes were difficult to prosecute. The forged guardianship papers were more promising, but I would need proof they were forged. I would need documentation evidence a case. I felt the walls closing in. I had about $6,000 left in my personal savings account money they hadn't been able to touch because I had kept it separate. That would cover maybe 3 months of basics if I was very careful. Luna needed to see a pediatrician next week. I had rent due in 2 weeks. My car registration was expired. The weight of it all pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. That's when I met Elena. I had seen my neighbor before, of course. She was hard to miss, a woman in her 70s who dressed like she was heading to a gallery opening even when she was just checking her mail. She had white hair cut in a sharp bob, dark eyes that missed nothing, and an air of absolute self-possession that I envied. We had exchanged pleasantries in the hallway, but nothing more. That evening, I found a package at my door. Inside was a container of homemade soup, still warm, and a soft knitted blanket in shades of blue and green. There was a note written in elegant script. For the baby, and for you. Life is hard. You don't have to do it alone. Elena 4B. I cried when I read it. Stood in my doorway with Luna on my hip and cried because a stranger had shown me more kindness in one gesture than my own family had in years. I knocked on Elena's door an hour later, intending to just thank her quickly and leave. But she invited me in, sat me down at her kitchen table, poured me tea, and said, "Tell me." So I did. I told her everything. The whole ugly story of being the backup daughter, the reliable one. The one who never got chosen but always got used. I told her about Celeste and the baby and the empty bank account and the Valencia photos. I told her about the forged guardianship papers and the police report that would probably go nowhere. I told her I didn't know what to do, that I was drowning and no one cared. Elena listened without interrupting. When I finished, she refilled my tea and said, "I grew up in Barcelona. I know something about families that look perfect on the outside and rot from within. And I know something about being underestimated." She reached across the table and took my hand. "You are not drowning, mija. You are learning to swim. And you're going to be fine because you already know the most important thing." "What's that?" "You know you deserve better. That's where it starts." She gave me the name of a lawyer, Marcus Thorne. He worked at a legal aid clinic downtown and specialized in family law. Elena said he was brilliant and persistent and had a particular hatred for people who exploited the system to hurt vulnerable parties. She called him while I sat there and explained the situation in rapid Spanish that I couldn't quite follow. When she hung up, she said, "He'll see you tomorrow at 10. Go, tell him everything, and let him help you." I went to Marcus Thorne's office the next morning with Luna in her carrier and a folder full of every document I could find. The legal aid clinic was in a worn-down building in Dorchester, up 3 flights of stairs that had seen better days. His office was small and cluttered with case files, but when he stood up to shake my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Marcus was probably in his early 30s with dark hair that needed a cut and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had the intensity of someone who actually gave a damn about his work. He gestured for me to sit and said, "Elena speaks very highly of you. Tell me what happened." So I did. For the second time in 2 days, I laid out the whole mess. This time I had evidence. I showed him the bank statements, the transaction history showing the systematic draining of the joint account. I showed him the forged guardianship papers. I showed him screenshots of my mother's social media showing the Valencia life they were living on money that wasn't entirely theirs. I showed him text messages from Celeste, increasingly erratic and cruel over the past year. I showed him the police report I had filed. Marcus took notes, his pen moving quickly across his legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "This is bad. For them, I mean. This is actually very bad for them." Really? I had expected him to tell me there was nothing I could do, that family matters were complicated, that I should try to work it out privately. Really? He tapped the guardianship papers. "This is fraud. Forging someone's signature on a legal document is a crime. The fact that it involves a minor makes it worse. And the systematic draining of a joint account while planning to flee the country and leave you with full responsibility for a child you didn't agree to take custody of. That's financial exploitation, at minimum possibly conspiracy to commit fraud. He looked at Luna sleeping peacefully in her carrier. How long has the baby been primarily in your care? 3 months exclusively, 6 months realistically. And your sister has provided no financial support. Nothing. I've paid for everything. And your parents knew this. They knew you were caring for their grandchild while your sister abandoned her responsibilities. Yes, I asked them for help multiple times. They told me to stop being dramatic. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had just found a winning hand. Eleanor, I'm going to be straight with you. What your family did is reprehensible. It's also potentially illegal in multiple ways. We can fight this. We can absolutely fight this. I don't have much money. My voice came out small. Maybe $3,000 I can spare after paying rent and keeping Luna fed. Legal aid covers most of it. But more than that, I think we can make a very strong case that you're entitled to significant financial restitution from your family. The joint account money damages for the fraud, potentially even child support from your sister. And I think we can get you full legal guardianship of Luna if that's what you want. I don't know what I want. It was the truth. I'm so angry at all of them. But Luna didn't ask for any of this. And she's innocent. She deserves stability. Then we start there. We petition for emergency custody on the grounds that you've been her primary caretaker for 3 months with no support from her biological mother. We use the forged guardianship papers as evidence that your family has been systematically planning to abandon both you and the baby. And we subpoena their financial records to show they had the means to support you both, but chose to flee the country instead. He looked at me directly. But I need to know you're ready for this. Going after your family legally, it's going to get ugly. They're going to fight back. They're going to say terrible things about you. Are you ready for that? I thought about Luna, about the way she had started to recognize my voice, to reach for me when she was scared. I thought about my empty bank account and my grandmother's wasted inheritance. I thought about 37 years of being the good daughter and where it had gotten me, and I thought about what Elena had said. You know you deserve better. Yes, I said, I'm ready. The next 3 weeks were a blur of paperwork and court filings and gathering evidence. Marcus was as good as Elena had promised. He was thorough and relentless. We filed for emergency custody of Luna. We filed a fraud complaint regarding the guardianship papers. We filed a civil suit against my parents for the joint account money. And then because Marcus said we might as well go for broke, we filed an international asset freeze request with the Spanish authorities arguing that my parents had used stolen funds to purchase property abroad. That last one was a long shot. Marcus told me not to count on it. But he also said that sometimes if you threw enough legal action at people, they got scared and made mistakes. My parents made a mistake. They came back to Boston. They must have gotten word about the lawsuits, about the custody petition, about the asset freeze request that was winding through international bureaucracy. They probably thought they could sweep in and fix everything with the force of their personalities and their respectability. They probably thought I would fold the moment they showed up. They arrived at my condo on a Tuesday evening unannounced. I was feeding Luna when I heard the knock. Through the peephole, I saw them standing in the hallway, Richard in his expensive coat, Victoria with her perfect hair. They looked exactly the same. They looked like people who had done nothing wrong. I opened the door with Luna in my arms. Didn't invite them in, just stood there in the doorway and waited. Eleanor. My mother's voice was warm, concerned, with just a hint of reproach. We've been so worried. We got some very strange legal notices. What's going on? You stole my money and left me with Luna. I kept my voice steady. That's what's going on. Stole? My father looked genuinely offended. Eleanor, that was a family account. We all had access to it. We made a withdrawal for our retirement, which we had every right to do. This is exactly the kind of dramatic overreaction we were worried about. You took $73,000 and moved to another country without telling me. You left me with a baby I never agreed to take care of. You forged my signature on guardianship papers, but I'm the one being dramatic. Victoria's face hardened. We did not forge anything. You signed those papers months ago. You clearly don't remember, but you were happy to help out with Luna. This is just you being bitter because we finally got to do something for ourselves instead of catering to your constant need for attention. It was so perfectly twisted, so expertly manipulated that for a second I almost believed it. Almost thought maybe I had signed those papers and forgotten. Almost thought maybe I was overreacting. But then Luna made a small sound, and I looked down at her, at this tiny person who depended on me completely, and the fog cleared. I filed for full legal custody of Luna, I said. I filed a fraud complaint about the guardianship papers. I filed a civil suit to recover the joint account money. And I requested an international asset freeze on your Spanish accounts. The silence that followed was profound. My father's face went from pink to red to almost purple. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You can't do that," Richard finally said. "You're our daughter. You can't sue your own family." "I can, I am, and I'm going to win." "Eleanor, please." Victoria tried a different tack, softening her voice, reaching out toward me. "Let's be reasonable. Let's sit down and talk about this like adults. You're upset, we understand that, but this doesn't have to be a legal matter. We're family." "No," I said. "We're not. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't steal and lie and abandon. You're just people who share my DNA. That's all you ever were." My father took a step closer, trying to intimidate me with his size, his presence. "If you pursue this, Eleanor, we will bury you. We have lawyers. We have resources. We have reputations in this city. You're nobody. You think anyone is going to believe your word over ours." I smiled then, and it felt good. It felt powerful. "Actually, Dad, I have documentation. I have bank records showing you drained the account from Spain. I have timestamps proving you've been planning this for months while telling me everything was fine. I have recorded phone calls with Celeste where she admits you all knew about the plan. And I have a really good lawyer who specializes in family exploitation cases and is absolutely salivating at the chance to cross-examine you in court." Victoria's face crumbled. "You recorded Celeste, your own sister." "I documented my sister admitting to conspiracy to commit fraud. There's a difference." "You ungrateful little bitch." My father's mask came completely off then. "After everything we did for you, after we gave you a good home, paid for your education, included you in the family business, and this is how you repay us. You never did anything for me that you didn't also use against me. You never included me unless you needed something, and the only business you taught me was how to be a doormat." I shifted Luna to my other hip. "You need to leave now. If you want to see Luna after this, it will be supervised, and only if the court allows it. You won't win." My mother's voice was cold now, all pretense dropped. "You know why, because you're not strong enough. You never have been. You're the daughter who couldn't even keep a man interested who has nothing but a mediocre job and a rental apartment. You're alone, Eleanor, and you're going to lose because you're always alone." That one hit harder than I wanted to admit, because she wasn't entirely wrong. I was alone. I didn't have a partner, didn't have many friends because I had spent so many years catering to my family's needs. I didn't have much money or power or connections. But I had Luna, and I had Elena, and I had Marcus, and I had something they didn't have, something they had never had. I had the truth. "Goodbye," I said, and I closed the door in their faces. I heard them arguing in the hallway as they left, Victoria's voice rising in anger, Richard's deep tones responding. I locked the door, put Luna in her crib, and went to the bathroom and cried for 20 minutes. Not because I regretted what I had said, but because it hurt. Even when you know someone is poison, even when you know leaving them is the right choice, it still hurts to cut them out. When I came out, there was another note from Elena slipped under my door. "I heard. Proud of you. Come for dinner when you're ready. I make excellent paella." The court date was set for 6 weeks later. Marcus prepared me thoroughly, warning me about every tactic my parents' lawyers might use. They hired Bradley Westfield, a guy who specialized in protecting wealthy families from accountability. He was expensive and he was good, but Marcus was better. The week before court, something happened that changed everything. Marcus got a call from the Spanish authorities. My father's asset freeze request had triggered a deeper investigation. When the Spanish financial regulators started looking into Richard and Victoria's transactions, they found irregularities. Lots of them. Money transferred from accounts that shouldn't have been accessible. Property purchased under false names. Tax evasion going back years. It turned out that the Valencia escape wasn't just about retirement. It was about running from consequences that were already catching up with them. And my lawsuit had accidentally shone a spotlight on their entire financial house of cards. Marcus called me with the news on a Friday evening. "Eleanor, you need to sit down for this. The Spanish authorities are freezing all of your parents' assets, not just as a temporary measure, but as part of a criminal investigation into international money laundering and tax fraud. And the IRS here in the States is now involved too. Your parents are in serious legal trouble. I sat down, looked at Luna playing on her mat babbling to her stuffed giraffe. What does that mean for the custody case? It means we're going to win. No judge is going to grant custody rights to people who are under investigation for financial crimes and who abandoned their infant grandchild in another country while fleeing legal consequences. And the money, the $73,000, that's trickier. But given that they used that money to purchase property that's now frozen, and given that they obtained it through what's looking more and more like a pattern of fraud, I think we have a very good chance of getting a judgment against them. Whether they can pay it is another question, but we can at least try. I felt numb. I had wanted them to face consequences. I had wanted them to be held accountable. But I hadn't imagined it would be like this, hadn't imagined their entire life would collapse. And I found that I didn't feel as satisfied as I thought I would. Mostly, I just felt tired. The court hearing was in a small courtroom in Suffolk County. My parents were there looking diminished somehow. Victoria had lost weight. Richard's face was gray. They were flanked by their lawyer, who looked like he was already mentally drafting his withdrawal from the case. Celeste wasn't there. Marcus had tried to serve her, but she was apparently somewhere in Southeast Asia and refusing to respond to any legal notices. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Carmichael. She had a reputation for being no-nonsense and fair. She listened to both sides present their cases. Bradley Westfield tried his best, painting me as a vindictive daughter who was exaggerating a simple family misunderstanding. He tried to make my parents sound like innocent retirees who had made some minor administrative errors. Then Marcus stood up. He presented the evidence methodically piece by piece. The bank records showing the planned withdrawal, the forged guardianship papers, the recordings of Celeste, the proof that I had been Luna's sole caretaker for 3 months with zero financial support, the Spanish investigation findings, the IRS documentation. By the time he finished, my parents looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. Judge Carmichael reviewed the evidence in silence. Then she looked up first at my parents, then at me. "This is one of the more disturbing cases I've seen this year," she said. "And I've seen quite a few. Ms. Quinn, I want to commend you for your courage in bringing this matter to light. Your family engaged in systematic financial exploitation fraud and child abandonment. The fact that they did so while maintaining a veneer of respectability makes it even more reprehensible." She turned to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Vance, I am appalled by your conduct. You exploited your daughter's sense of family loyalty, stole her inheritance, forged legal documents, and abandoned your infant grandchild in order to fund a lifestyle abroad. This court finds clear evidence of fraud, financial exploitation, and child endangerment." Judge Carmichael's ruling was comprehensive. Full legal custody of Luna went to me. My parents were ordered to repay the $73,000 plus interest and legal fees. All visitation with Luna had to be supervised and approved by me in advance. The forged guardianship papers were voided, and a criminal referral was made to the district attorney's office. And then, because apparently the hits kept coming, the Spanish authorities had sent over additional findings. My parents' Valencia property was purchased with funds that were traced back to tax evasion and financial fraud going back 15 years. They were facing criminal charges in both countries. Richard stood up as the judge was finishing. "Your Honor, this is preposterous. Our daughter is lying. She has always been jealous of her sister, has always been bitter. This is a vindictive attack on a family that only ever tried to help her." Judge Carmichael looked at him coldly. "Mr. Vance, I have reviewed extensive documentation, recorded conversations, and financial records. Your daughter isn't lying. You are. And the fact that you're still trying to manipulate the narrative in my courtroom tells me everything I need to know about your character. Sit down." He sat. As we left the courthouse, my parents were met by federal agents in the hallway. I watched as they were questioned about the tax evasion investigation, watched as the reality of their situation finally seemed to sink in. Victoria started crying. Richard looked broken. And I felt nothing. Or maybe not nothing. Maybe I felt free. Outside, Marcus gave me a hug. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected him. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "So what now?" Now I figure out how to actually live. I looked down at Luna, who was awake and watching me with those serious gray eyes. We figure it out together. The next few months were a blur of paperwork and adjustments. My parents' assets were seized. Their house in Back Bay was sold to pay back taxes and legal fees. The Valencia property was confiscated by the Spanish government. They ended up moving to a small apartment in Quincy, both of them facing trial for multiple counts of tax fraud and evasion. Richard's consulting business collapsed once word got out. Victoria lost her teaching position. Their reputations, the thing they had cared about more than anything, were destroyed. Celeste surfaced briefly, sending me a series of texts from Bali or Thailand or wherever she was. They ranged from angry to pleading to manipulative. "You destroyed our family. I hope you're happy. Luna would be better off with someone who actually wanted her. Can you at least send money for my hotel? I'm desperate. You're a cruel bitch, just like I always said." I blocked her number after the first day. I had nothing to say to her. My life slowly stabilized. My boss worked with me to create a flexible schedule that allowed me to work partially from home. Elena became like a grandmother to Luna, watching her for a few hours when I had meetings teaching me how to cook. Actually healthy meals sitting with me in the evenings while Luna slept and telling me stories about her own life, her own family, dramas in Spain, her own journey to setting boundaries and choosing peace. Marcus and I became friends, real friends, the kind where you can call at 2 in the morning because the baby won't stop crying and you're losing your mind and the person actually answers and talks you through it. He never made a move, never complicated things, just showed up consistently as someone I could trust. It was novel having someone like that. I took some of the settlement money once it started coming through and did something I had been dreaming about for years. I bought into a pottery business in Cambridge, a small studio that offered classes and workspace for local artists. It wasn't going to make me rich, but it made me happy. I spent my evenings there sometimes, my hands in wet clay, shaping something beautiful from nothing. Luna would sleep in her carrier nearby, or sometimes Elena would bring her by so I could nurse her, and I would feel this sense of rightness that I had never felt in my entire corporate career. On Luna's first birthday, I threw her a small party. Just Elena, Marcus, a couple of colleagues from work who had become friends during all of this, and my pediatrician, Dr. Sarah, who had been so kind when I explained the custody situation. We had cake and balloons, and Luna smashed her face into frosting with absolute joy. Elena took photos, good ones, the kind that capture real happiness instead of Instagram perfection. That evening, after everyone left and Luna was asleep, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and thought about the past year. About everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I had lost my parents, or the idea of parents that I had clung to for 37 years. I had lost my sister, though, in truth. I wasn't sure I ever really had her. I had lost money and security and the illusion of family stability, but I had gained something infinitely more valuable. I had gained Luna, this perfect little person who was thriving under my care, who laughed when I made silly faces and reached for me when she was scared and trusted me completely. I had gained Elena, who reminded me that family isn't always blood, that sometimes the people who show up for you are the ones who choose to, not the ones who are obligated to. I had gained Marcus, solid and steady and real. I had gained my pottery studio, a place where I could create instead of just maintain. I had gained myself, the Eleanor who stood up, the Eleanor who fought back, the Eleanor who said, "No, this isn't acceptable," and meant it. 2 years later, almost to the day, I got a letter. It was from Victoria. She was in prison serving a 3-year sentence for tax fraud. Richard was serving 5 years at a different facility. The letter was long, full of justifications and excuses and carefully worded non-apologies. She said they had been under a lot of stress. She said I couldn't understand the pressure they were under. She said families were supposed to forgive each other. At the very end, she wrote, "We miss Luna. We would like to apply for supervised visitation when we're released. We hope you'll consider it. She's our granddaughter after all." I read the letter once. Then I read it again. I thought about showing it to Marcus, asking for legal advice. I thought about analyzing every word, every subtle manipulation. But then I realized something. It didn't matter. Her words had no power over me anymore. I wrote back one sentence. "Luna is my daughter. You gave up any right to her when you abandoned her. Don't contact me again." I didn't send it with rage or satisfaction. I sent it with peace, with closure, with the absolute certainty that I was done being their backup plan, their safety net, their scapegoat. I was done. Luna is 4 now. She calls me Mama. She doesn't remember Celeste. She doesn't know Richard and Victoria as grandparents. She knows Elena as Abuela knows Marcus as Uncle Marcus. She knows the women who work at the pottery studio, knows Dr. Sarah, knows the kind lady at the library who saves her favorite books. She's happy. She's secure. She knows she's loved. And I'm happy too. I'm not rich. I'm not living some glamorous life. But I have a daughter who adores me, a business that fulfills me, friends who show up, and a future I built with my own 2 hands from the rubble of what my family destroyed. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything went down, if I wish I had tried harder to work things out with my family, if I feel guilty about the consequences they faced. I tell them the truth. I don't regret standing up for myself and Luna. I don't regret exposing the fraud and manipulation. I don't regret choosing peace over pretense, and I don't feel guilty because I didn't destroy my family. They destroyed themselves. They made choices, terrible choices, and they faced consequences. That's not on me. I'm raising Luna to know her worth. I'm teaching her that family should be kind, that love doesn't come with strings attached, that it's okay to walk away from people who hurt you even if society says you're supposed to forgive them. I'm teaching her that being the responsible one doesn't mean being the doormat, that saying no is a complete sentence, that she doesn't have to set herself on fire to keep other people warm. And on the hard days when I'm tired and overwhelmed and wondering how I'm going to manage everything, I look at her playing with her clay in the studio, her little hands making shapes, and I remember. I remember that I was left with nothing but her, and she was everything I needed to become the person I was supposed to be all along. The best revenge isn't confrontation or public humiliation. It's living well. It's being happy. It's building something beautiful from the broken pieces. It's watching your daughter take her first steps, form her first words, create her first artwork, and knowing that she'll grow up in a home filled with real love, not manipulation disguised as care. They left me with nothing but her, but she was everything, and I wouldn't change a single thing. Here's what I learned. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can't change people who benefit from your suffering, and you absolutely cannot set yourself on fire to keep ungrateful people warm. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop. Stop explaining. Stop justifying. Stop hoping they'll magically see your worth. Just stop. Walk away. Build a better life. Surround yourself with people who actually value you, and let go of the idea that family loyalty means accepting abuse. Because here's the truth. They don't tell you. Family isn't supposed to hurt you. Real love doesn't come with conditions and scorekeeping and constant tests of loyalty. Real love shows up. Real love supports. Real love doesn't steal from you and then blame you for being upset about it. And if the people who are supposed to love you most are treating you worst, you don't owe them anything. Not your money, not your time, not your energy, and definitely not your peace. I know this story is heavy. I know it might bring up feelings about your own family, your own relationships, your own boundaries that need setting. If you've ever been the family scapegoat, if you've ever been taken advantage of by people who should protect you, if you've ever had to choose between your well-being and family loyalty, you're not alone. Drop a comment below and tell me about it. Let's build a community of people who chose themselves and didn't look back. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own boundaries and relationships, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refused to be victims, who fought back, who built beautiful lives from terrible situations. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to walk away from toxicity, even when it wears the mask of family. Because at the end of the day, the family you choose is often better than the family you're born into. And the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself. Have you ever had to cut off a family member who was toxic? Have you ever been put in a position where you had to choose between being used and being free? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one.